Good afternoon once again, everybody. And welcome back to the Forbes Middle East Summit. I'm really excited to be with my guest, Alison Rehill-Erguven. She is the CEO of Cenomi Centers, and I'm thrilled to be speaking with her today. We're talking about the balancing act between equality and leadership. It's something that I think that whether you're sitting here in Saudi Arabia or elsewhere in the world, we are all struggling to enact, because I don't think there's one woman that wouldn't say she wants to promote other women. And yet at the same time, those women have to be qualified and they have to be a part of the vision that you have for your business. Alison, we talked a bit about this in our phone conversation a few days ago, but what in your mind is the most difficult challenge in promoting women today?
Ooh, interesting. Okay. The most difficult challenge in promoting women today, well, look, the subject of this is the balancing act, right? So finding balance, I think, at first, let's just take 2 steps back. Trying to find balance as a woman today, I still struggle with it, to be perfectly frank. I think many days I've got this, things are good. And then on other days, I'm feeling a level of guilt because I'm not with my family. I'm feeling a level of guilt because I didn't, put enough time in at work, whether it's a family obligation, whatever the case may be. So I think one other layer from a personal perspective is feeling that imposter syndrome. So the imposter syndrome, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is not that you feel it, but it's when you are in a room and you don't necessarily feel like you're qualified to be there. There are still moments where I struggle with an imposter syndrome as well. So I think some of the biggest issues in empowering women and in bringing women's voice forward, it starts first personally, and getting a level of comfort with where you are, where you want to go, having a voice. That can be a bit of a struggle.
Yeah. It's an interesting topic because it's something that I've covered for years now. I once interviewed the CEO of LinkedIn Middle East, and he said, the funny thing you don't understand is that if a job opening happens and a man and a woman with equal qualifications are looking at that job opening, 9 times out of 10, the man will click for that promotion or click for that job, and the woman will take that step and think, oh wait, am I really qualified to do this? Am I ready to take this on? Am I, going to set myself up for failure or let down my team?
Yes.
Those are the things that go through a woman's mind as opposed to a man, and a man just says, oh yes, take me.
That's very true.
It's fascinating. And I think one of the things, as you mentioned, is finding that balance, because if you feel that you found some kind of balance, then that gives you that confidence and less of the imposter syndrome problem.
It can, but again, it's still a bit of a struggle. And then it comes down to potentially what you feel like you sacrifice. To your point, finding your voice in a room, okay? If we are too loud, if we are too direct, if we are too aggressive, or if we are deemed to be too loud, too direct, or too aggressive, we are viewed a certain way, whether that is difficult, whatever the case may be. I'll stay with difficult. Whereas men don't necessarily suffer the same types of stereotypes that we do, which can be a bit of a struggle when you're trying to find your voice in your career, in a boardroom, in a meeting.
I remember when I learned that strong as a description was not necessarily a positive, and I was shocked by that because I had been raised with this idea that being a strong person, a strong woman, a strong mother, a strong wife, was a positive attribute.
Yes.
But then when that is used at you, if you will, thrown at you, it can be destabilizing.
It can be. And I think one of the things, look, I think sometimes you're innately born with an emotional intelligence that helps get you through life and through certain situations. Sometimes it boosts your confidence. Sometimes it helps you read a room. If there are any of you that haven't done any training or any reading up on emotional intelligence, I'd highly recommend doing that because it gives you a level of it gives you, I would say, like some tools to use, to be able to read people, to read body language, to inject empathy sometimes also into certain situations, which can take you a lot farther than being the loudest voice or being super direct or being super aggressive. I personally have found trying to have some level of emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence in a room has taken me, I think, quite far.
Do you find that it is a struggle not to alienate people? And men, I'm talking men and women, because one of the things that we don't like to talk about is that, especially for my friends who are working in the influencer industry, sometimes their toughest critics are women. Their toughest audience is other women. And that's a horrible thing to say, but we all know that it's true.
It is. Look, I think one of the greatest things about a conference like this is that you develop your networks, that you do try to network, even though for some it can be uncomfortable. I know for me personally, sometimes it's uncomfortable, but you take advantage of these situations to learn from others. You know, one thing that we discussed also in terms of helping women is if we pivoted to, you know, government regulation.
Yeah.
Of women, you know, required to be on boards or required to be in certain positions. It's a very, very complex topic. I am not a fan of governments regulating the percentages of women that need to be on boards. And the reason I'm not, thank you. And it's because it delegitimizes our reasons to be there. I'm a full supporter of meritocracy, which is you're there because you showed your value, somebody wanted you to be there, you wanted to be there. But the moment we start putting percentages around it, it's a problem. But let me just say, I am a full supporter of Vision 2030 because it has a very distinct element of female empowerment in it. And they set the bar at having 30% of the female workforce in Saudi to be, or 30% of the eligible workforce in Saudi to be working by 2030. You've crushed it already. You're already at 39% and it's 2023. So can you imagine the runway that you've got ahead of you, which is just incredibly exciting.
Yeah. Those numbers are staggering in a sense, because it's only been just a few years, as you say.
Just a few years.
But also that is helped by the fact that so many women, particularly in the kingdom and in the broader region, have that level of higher education. So they are ready to take those roles.
Yes.
And many of them who are worked outside the kingdom. And as a direct result of Vision 2030, as you know, they've come back to Saudi Arabia because they see opportunities here that just weren't there a few years ago. Talk to me about this. Promoting women. We talked about it at the top about this, but we all want to promote women. But what is the challenge there in terms of, as I say, so often we hold ourselves back, in the corporate world at least, because we're not necessarily sure of our qualifications. We're not necessarily sure we're ready to take on those roles. So as a mentor, as a CEO, how do you navigate that? Because you want to inspire people and at the same time not to set them up for a mistake.
Sure. So in taking on this position and in the first instances or in the first few months of taking on this position, I threw a stake in the ground and said that Cenomi Centers would have 40% of its senior management level be female by 2025. And granted, it sounds somewhat hypocritical because here I am putting a percentage on something, and then am I in myself delegitimizing the reasons for females to be there? But you know, frankly, the bar is so low that we need to encourage this kind of support and bringing people up through the ranks. But in addition to that, what I personally have taken a closer look at is, you know, in your 20s, you start off and you're so excited and you've got the world ahead of you and you're potentially not married yet if you want to be married. You potentially haven't had a baby yet if you want to have a baby. And by the time you get to your 30s and 40s, if you've chosen the path of potentially marriage and or having a family, we lose a huge percentage of the female workforce, at least in the West, by the time they hit their 30s and 40s, because there aren't systems and support in place to help female working moms specifically be able to adjust and juggle everything, back to the balancing act. So one of the things that I'm taking a look at in our company specifically is what support systems can I put in place? I'm taking a look at our policies, I'm taking a look at maternity leave, I'm taking a look at childcare, I'm taking a look at the things that I actually didn't have when I was having my 2 children. I had crappy maternity leave. I had very expensive childcare that I had to deal with, and it becomes a stress. If we can remove some of that stress, if we can provide more flexibility, I think then we can keep our really qualified women in the workplace longer and support them, as well as women's networks, which is something we're also going to start.
What are some of the things you notice in particular to Saudi Arabia and this market when you're hiring women, when you're bringing women in? As someone who's been traveling to the kingdom since 2007, just as an aside, working with government offices, working with private companies as well, the women run everything. And that has been apparent to me for a very long time. And I think that speaks to what this country will be in the next decade. But how do you see it from where you are?
So, I mean, this is a women's summit, but I am witnessing, let me do it one way. My observation is that the women in my company specifically, the good majority are rock stars. And I'm so excited about that. What's more important, though, is that the men that are in senior positions, that are either leading them or are a peer to them, they are just as big an advocate, which I find so motivational and hopeful, because they'll come to me and say, we need to promote Wafa, as an example, because she's amazing, she's leading everything, and she's doing it. When we can balance who's promoting, and it's not just the females that are promoting females, but we've got the males promoting as well, we're going to go farther, faster.
Yeah. Where are we with the gender bias in your mind? Is it getting easier? When you look at two CVs side by side?
No, for me, CV is all about value and merit. It's not about gender.
Yeah.
Whoever, and I'd be perfectly frank, if I have a male and a female, whoever has the better CV and is interviewed better is going to get that job. And I think that's fair. I can't base it just on the fact that I want more females in the business. I have to do what's right by the business as well. But back to your bias opinion. But to your bias opinion comment, I'll give you a small example. And this is where having a voice, and when you sometimes have to sacrifice for what you perceive as the greater good. I was at a dinner 3 weeks ago-ish with a group of men. And I'm the only female at the dinner. It's a very senior level of people. And we're talking about our children. It's a very innocent conversation. We're talking about our children. And the one male gentleman that was there, close to his 70s, and I say that because it's generational, the nature of the comment. He's stating that his wife has done such an amazing job raising their children. So already here comes my guilt factor. And they one's at Stanford and one's here and one's there, and it's so important that women raise children and stay at home. I'm sitting right at that dinner table. I'm sitting right there, and I'm looking right at him, and I'm thinking, are you reading the room? Clearly not. Clearly not. But the sacrifice that I made for a potential joint venture was to nod and say, yes, wonderful that your wife is so good at her stay-at-home position, all the power to stay-at-home moms. And I chose not to go on the defensive and not to be antagonistic, because it wasn't the right place and it wasn't the right time. But I'm mentioning it because it clearly still bothers me.
Yes.
And
as it should.
Yeah.
As it should.
And bias is absolutely still there, no doubt.
Yeah. What is your advice to women who are navigating that? Because you've had a family, you're married, you have been the CEO of this company, and as you say, it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Does anyone ever get it right?
I think hopefully you have more good days than bad days in the balancing act. This is my second CEO position. I was a CEO in Asia for 5 years prior to this, and I was an MD before that. So I've held some relatively senior level positions for almost 15 years now. And then prior to that, navigating my career up the ladder. The one piece of advice that I can give, if you choose to have a partner in life, please choose really, really carefully, especially if you want to have a career. because the decision you make about whom you want to spend your life with is probably one of the most important decisions. Oh my God, I can get a little upset. I can tear up. It's probably one of the most important decisions that you can make, because if you need somebody who will support you, who has your back, who will celebrate you. Oh, I got emotional, sorry.
No, I think it's amazing.
Sorry.
And otherwise, it's not worth it.
Well, otherwise, it's too hard.
Yeah.
It's too, and most likely you won't be as successful as you need to be, because you need somebody by your side. I'm incredibly lucky, and I say that now. It's probably why I get emotional, but it's one of the, if you choose to be married, if you don't choose, whatever. But if you're going to choose to have a partner, and married, whatever gender, just choose right.
Yeah. What about your female friends and those that you depend on? Always in the workplace, you have your girls, as I've had, and then also in the rest of your life. I mean, how do you, it's not about choosing your friends, but how important is it that you have that sounding board?
Oh, I think it's incredibly important. I think it's your sanity, frankly. You need a good girl group, or even if it's just a couple of people to reach out to keep you in check, to keep your feet on the ground sometimes as well, to remind you where you came from.
Yeah.
But and sometimes they can bring to light things that you're not seeing. Especially when you're not putting yourself first. I think females have that tendency and that habit to put everybody else before themselves and their own needs. And it's a nature-nurture thing that we have. And so if you're not putting yourself first, and if I was to talk about sacrifice, the one thing I have sacrificed earlier in my career was my health.
We've all done it.
Yeah. And it's and because of a health scare, really, in all seriousness, a big health scare in my mid-30s, I had to reset and rethink about what I was doing and my priorities, and put better habits in place so that I was eating better and I was taking a little bit more time and putting my health and family first.
Yeah, and it's of course not something that's encouraged in the corporate world, whether you're in the West or anywhere else.
No.
And I think as women, we also felt, and I certainly felt in my profession, the need desperately, you're not the prettiest, you're not the smartest, but you work harder than everybody else. So I always felt the necessary pressure to work harder than all the other men in the room, as well as everybody else, just for the sense that gave me a feeling of strength and less of an imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think perhaps in that sense, women need to recalibrate.
Okay, that's fair. What I also think, though, is maybe as you and I were growing up through our career, I haven't really seen women's networks come about until maybe the last decade. So the better part of half of my career, almost 2/3 of my career, you didn't really have that support network. It's not until the last, I would say, decade-ish, where these support networks and maybe mentorship programs and a more focus on helping women and supporting women and empowering women and championing women has only come about. And I think even in the beginning, we were still trying to find our feet and what that meant. Yeah. And what did we need to focus on? I still think we struggle with what we need to focus on.
Yeah. I've only got a minute or so left, but I think this is important to touch on, and we mentioned it a bit earlier. Just sometimes the toughest critics are ourselves, but are other women. And I think that my friends in the space of social media and influencers certainly feel this, because part of what they have to do is put themselves out there on a daily basis, which is hard for anyone, especially if you're not a politician and you're not there for that game. But in terms of women in corporate life as well, how tough is that to navigate? Because I think, unfortunately, we've got it coming at us from all sides. And there is pressure for that perfection, which, by the way, is not possible for anyone, as we all know. But it's a constant pressure. You have to be the best wife, the best mother, and the best CEO. And you have all eyes on you in every space. Unfair expectations, but this is life.
Well, I think expectations, it's a perfect word. I don't know, I'm somebody that actually usually tries to manage my expectation. The moment we place our expectation on a certain situation or an outcome, or the moment we're trying to put an expectation on how other people are going to behave, we're usually let down. So the only thing we have control over is how we react to any situation, whether it's family or career or whatever the case may be. So I would say that it's a tough one, but managing our own expectation, keeping it real, is probably one of the healthiest things that we can do, besides finding a good spouse.
Excellent. You're going to have to fill us in next time on how one does that.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Alison.
Thank you.